Welcome to the Ryoko Show, the podcast that inspires and empowers you to create the life you truly love. I'm Ryoko. Today, I want to take you on a journey. July 11th marks a significant milestone for me. It's been 17 years since I left Japan. So this journey spans 17 years, multiple countries, and countless lessons. And if somebody had told me in Japan before I went to Canada that eventually I would launch a podcast to inspire people, become a coach and trainer, I wouldn't have believed it. At that time, these aspirations were not even on my list. And it's been almost a year since I launched my podcast, and I really appreciate you tuning in every week. So thank you. Now, going back to my journey. After graduating from the university in the States, I went back to Japan and I found myself longing for adventure once again. The desire to explore new horizons never left me. I wanted to live in another country, but this time not as a temporary worker, but as a resident with the freedom to work and build a life. I wanted to go back to the States, but there is no immigration system like Canada. So I chose Canada thinking that this is the closest I can get to the States. So when I got the chance to apply for a working holiday visa in Canada, I jumped on it. So that was 2007. And I wanted to see what it was like to live in Canada since eventually I was planning to immigrate there. In 2007, I packed my bags and left Japan for Canada, well, actually Toronto. So I lived here in 2007. I just came here in April, but I lived in Toronto for 1 year in 2007. So I spent a year here in Toronto. Then I decided to go on a solo backpacking trip through Latin America. This was something that I'd always wanted to do. So I decided to take the opportunity and I jumped on it. I thought that this would be the best time because it was just before I needed to decide my next step. And because I knew that permanent residency in Canada would take a long time. So I took advantage of the time and I decided to go on the backpacking trip. So first I went to Mexico. I explored so many different places in Mexico, and I even stayed in Cancun for 1 month, going to the beach every day. And then I went to Guatemala, then Cuba, Argentina. And Argentina was one of the countries that I dreamed of visiting since when I was living in Japan. And because from Japan, it takes such a long time, so many days to get to Argentina. So this time I really wanted to have this experience of living in Buenos Aires for 1 month, which I did. So I stayed there for 1 month and went to tango shows every night, almost every night. I went to see tango shows and I really enjoyed my stay in Buenos Aires, eating a lot of steak and drinking wine. I met so many backpackers there. And then I went to Uruguay and Chile. So to go to Chile, I took a bus from Buenos Aires. So it took me 24 hours to cross the border. But on the way to Chile, I stopped by in Mendoza because I wanted to go to winery. And I stayed with an Argentinian family there. And I had unique experience of visiting winery by bicycle, one winery after another. And I had so much fun with my friend and this bicycle trip to different wineries. And after staying a few days with the Argentinian family, it was very difficult to say goodbye to those children who became so attached to us. Then in Chile, I visited Santiago de Chile and then Viña del Mar. So Viña del Mar, there was a Japanese family who is doing Airbnb. So I stayed there and I met many Japanese backpackers. And we went to fisherman's market. We bought fresh salmon. We made sushi. It was so much fun staying in Chile and enjoying the very cold beach there. So as you can see, I had so much fun with the locals because I speak Spanish and we had wonderful conversations. Sometimes just because I speak Spanish, I got extra discounts at the store, or I was invited to family events. And it was just a wonderful journey in Latin America. So I wanted to, because I was in Chile, I wanted to continue my trip visiting Peru and Bolivia because I wanted to go to Machu Picchu. Then something happened. My intuition led me back to Mexico. So I wanted to go to Peru, but then I kept hearing this voice saying, end the trip and just fly back to Mexico City. And eventually that was my plan. I was planning to go back to Mexico City, but I didn't want to go because I wanted to go to Peru and Bolivia. But because I kept hearing the same voice over and over, I thought that maybe it's time to just end the trip and listen to this persistent intuition. And I flew back to Mexico. And there I ended up getting a job, which was a very good timing. Maybe that's why I heard the voice saying, end the trip and go back to Mexico City. Because that time, the company that hired me, they were about to find a person from Japan because they couldn't find a candidate. And then they decided to go through the website of Japanese Chamber of Commerce, where I asked them to upload my resume, and the company saw my resume, and then they hired me. So if I hadn't gone back to Mexico when I heard that persistent voice, maybe that company would have just hired someone in Japan and then brought that person from Japan to Mexico. There, I stayed for a few years until I got my permanent residency approved for Canada. When I immigrated to Canada, initially I wanted to pursue my dream. I thought that that would be a time to shift my career and do something that I really wanted, which was to teach. But because I don't have Canadian experience, I don't have education from Canada, the first step was to go back to university. But at that time, as a newcomer, financial stability seemed more important than pursuing my dream. So getting a job in international business where I had prior experiences, and also I could use my language skills, saving more money to buy my place seemed more logical and made sense. So I chose this path that I considered the path that made more sense. But deep down, I knew that it was not my passion. I had stopped following my intuition and settled for a life that felt stagnant and small. And I spent my life like that for a long time. And when pandemic hit, I hit the rock bottom. I felt isolated. Well, I was isolated because of the safety measure in Canada. And also my job in international business was at risk. So I wasn't happy with my relationship. And I felt like I wasn't living up to my true potential. So although I felt anxious about the unknown and so scared about my future, I knew I wasn't done. I knew that there had to be something more in life. So in the midst of desperation, I discovered Jack Canfield and the success principles. And I began to explore my true desires. That then everything changed. I felt pulled toward the unknown, but I was so terrified. It meant letting go of what I considered a good enough life and diving headfirst into something completely unknown. And part of me wanted to lean in, and while other part felt paralyzed by fear. But I've learned that when your dream is so big that it scares you, you're onto something magical. And by taking small risks, one step at a time, listening to your intuition, you open yourself up to new possibilities and experiences that you never imagined possible. This is exactly what I did. First, I focused on rebuilding my self-esteem, emotional state, then learned the success principles. Then I learned to teach them, became certified trainer, then launched my podcast to inspire people and share my story, and did the advanced live training with Jack, and did the coaching certification, and worked on building my business. I left 9-to-5 job. I was so afraid of letting go, but I did. And I sold my condo, the first home I bought, but I sold it and I moved to build my business and reach out to my communities. I wanted to be close to Japanese and Asian community here. So one step at a time, taking actions, embracing the unknown with the leap of faith. My journey taught me that deeper fulfillment isn't found in playing it safe or following the path of least resistance. It's found in embracing the unknown, trusting your instincts, and pursuing what sets your soul on fire. Remember, even the grandest of dreams can be achieved by taking it one step at a time. So have faith, believe in yourself and your dream before you can even see it. And dare to take that scary first step. Let the journey unfold before you and trust that the universe, intuition, your higher self, whatever you call it, will guide you along the way. I hope my story invites you to see where you are in life. And if there is part of you that says there is more to your life and more to your potential, listen to that tiny voice and give a light to that voice, because you do have more potential and your life is not done yet. So take the first scary step to allow yourself to dream again. Allow yourself to imagine what's possible. Then take the baby step. So that's all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. If you like this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, go to the show notes and grab the free guide to build the first foundation to transform your life. Until next time, keep shining.